Boom. I hit the record. So, ladies and gents, I don't know what orders I'm releasing these. I've just been recording them as I can grab various experts, tie them to a table, and offer them warp stone for their opinions. I used to be good at dwarves. I used to be a good dwarf player. And then I stopped playing them for like a year and a half, and now I'm a shit dwarf player. So we found a good one. We found the best one. He's part of the clan Sons of the Mountain, which is a dwarfish clan. And yeah, probably the highest respected dwarf player active in Land Battles and Conquest right now. I don't know about domination. I know you dip your toes there sometimes, but I don't know if you're respected over there. So I won't pretend to speak to that. We have a Gotrek Starbreaker. How are you doing, sir?
Hello, I am well. And on the domination part, yeah, probably not very, because I barely play there.
All right, we'll leave that to Grombrindle and Dr. Jellyfish. So, I explained to you before I hit record how the format works. For the audience, if this is your first guide you've popped in on, we have two parts. First part, we go through the whole roster and just discuss what is blank unit and what is blank unit for. This will hopefully help you on any patch because you can tell what that unit is generally used for. And then in part two, we'll be asking Gotrek more about what is currently working for him, what is currently strong in the meta right now as of January 4th, 2025. So I think that's patch like 6.0 or 6.01 or something, but whatever. All right, sir, take it away as you please.
All right, so we can start with the lords. Belagar and the regular lord both serve very similar purposes. They are your small but tanky foot characters. And sure, they are mostly just hold the line type of single entities rather than, go kill Tyrion in a duel type of unit.
Mm.
And then there is your melee slayer, the demon slayer, unarmored, but fast for a dwarf. And Ungrim. Both of these are sure they are both duelists, but Ungrim being AP is naturally better at fighting armored. Demon Slayer having magical attacks, better at fighting units with physical resistance. That's a given. Makaisen is an interesting lord. He is a ranged lord and a actually very decently strong one for his ranged attack, having like very fast reload, relatively high armor piercing, multiple bullets per shot. He has 0 armor though, being a slayer, so anything that hits him will hit him hard. He has practically no resistances other than his innate spell for being a dwarf and innate lord resists on missile, the 15%. So anything that clips him is going to hurt a lot, and he doesn't have a particularly high health pool either. Grombrindle. Very similar to Ungrim, actually, that duelist lord, not particularly mobile. But if he gets in a fight, he actually deals a lot of damage. Thorgrim is similar enough, but he's more support-focused, given his abilities, and his lack of AP does actually limit him quite a bit on where he can fight. Even if he has the highest HP pool, that just don't use like base health, he actually can struggle on duels.
I didn't realize he's not armor piercing. That's actually kind of wild.
One of the 3 dwarves that has the axe of a god, not armor piercing. Incredible. Thanks, CA. For spellcaster lords, technically, the Rune Lord and Thorak are identical in terms of spellcasting. They have the same lore of magic. They don't have any items like, say, Old Morathi's buffs to some certain spells like Soul Stealer. The Rune Lord is technically tankier than Thorak because of the AoE missile resistance from his Master Rune of Grogni and the Gatekeeper's Belt. But Thorak has armor piercing, and on top of the Anvil of Doom resistances. Because 25% physical resistance, 15 missile, 40 spell resists. Those are some mighty numbers just to have on your spellcaster that is armored.
Yeah. And then the Rune of Negation, I imagine, can also help in a pinch.
Yeah. Although I find that Rune of Negation, if you're dueling, because your average duel is what? 8 hit per every 5 seconds, give or take. Depending on if the character gets knocked down, if it gets pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
So it only lasting 24 seconds, you'll negate, say, 5-6 hits, maybe. I find it much more useful to pop it on infantry, which is getting hit by a lot of attacks, rather than on your single entity that is already incredibly tanky. Like, if you're getting, say, Thorak or Thorgrim sniped quickly, I think that was just you position him in front of, say, 3 cannons and did not react in time.
Gotcha. Is there any reason to take Thorak on foot versus Thorak on the Anvil of Doom?
If you're not looking to make use of Thorak's resistances, because it is technically not Thorak's, it is the Anvil's resistances. Thorak just has marginally better stats than the Rune Lord in terms of melee capabilities, and the Rune Lord has like 1,000 less hit points. So when I refer to Thorak being tanky, it's more on his Anvil. He plus his items for Perfect Vigor. That 50 melee defense he has right now is going a long way. Also, you want the Anvil when you don't want Thorak to get staggered, because Anvils don't actually have a stagger animation.
I think it's Spellbound who's been in my chat for like the last 3 years yelling at me whenever, and I say that with love, Spellbound, whenever I say, it's crazy something with like 80 melee attack is missing something with 40 melee defense, and then he brings up that so-and-so is exhausted, so it's pretty impactful. And I always kind of brushed him off as I'm like, yeah, whatever, nerd. But now that we can see vigor effects, holy shit, does being exhausted hurt. Like, your stats are pathetic when you're exhausted.
Yeah.
Vigor regen OP.
It is incredible. Even after its third nerf, it is still easily one of the best items and abilities in the entire game.
All right, Thorik, send it.
Then the heroes, you have your standard fighting hero in the Thane. He's much like Belagar the Lord. Tanky, not extremely high DPS. But good health, good armor. Very good melee stats. Dragon Slayer. He is what the Demon Slayer would want to have if it were up to him. Armor piercing instead of basic non-AP damage. And also, it might not seem like much, but that fire resistance actually comes in clutch a lot of the time, because people will forget, oh, Exalted Bloodletters are anti-infantry. They should kill these Dragon Slayer very quickly. And then they are doing a third less damage because of that 35% fire resist.
Yeah, they're adding fire damage to a lot of stuff to try and mitigate healing. So that's clutch. I didn't know he had that.
Yeah. There is another, I wouldn't say issue, but peculiarity with Slayers, but I'll address that after Garagrim and Gotrek. Okay. So Garagrim, he is a very strong duelist, anti-infantry duelist, I would correct. But also the War Mourner ability. Because a lot of factions have a relatively good resistance to, say, Wood Elves. Wood Elves, half the roster has physical resistance. And that used to be somewhat of a struggle for Dwarves, since they have practically no source of magic attacks other than their single entities. And Slayer, like Elite Slayers and Hammerers, which are expensive and tend to get shot at. Garagrim being able to give magical attacks on an AoE does change a lot of matchups, save against demons. Because now, instead of saying, okay, the dwarves have very resilient infantry lines, but they aren't dealing much damage, we're negating a quarter or a fifth of it. Now that doesn't matter. They can just shoot you with magical arrows and you die very quickly.
So it does apply to ranged units.
Oh yeah, like any imbuement, if you see, like for example, Garagrim's imbuement is magical attack, space weapon, armor piercing weapon damage. The weapon damage will not transfer over to the range, so you're not getting 10% range damage increase. But for some reason, magical attacks will. The same goes for Rune of Breaking. You'll see plus 25% on the weapon damage and sundered armor. It doesn't transfer the damage, so you're not shooting Trollhammer torpedoes for 75 armor piercing missile. but you are getting sundered armor on your arrows.
Huh. Okay.
And then there is Gotrek. Gotrek, in a nutshell, is just a more elite variant of the Dragon Slayer. Especially if you take Gotrek's Doom to make up for his lack of resistances. He is more expensive, obviously. Almost twice as expensive. But he is technically better. So if you like have double the funds laying around, sure, you could upgrade a Dragon Slayer to Gotrek. And in regards to Slayers, I believe this also applies to all the Slayer infantry, so Giant Slayers, Pirate Slayers, regular Slayers, Doom Seekers, and Goblin Hewers. The Slayer trait prevents you from ever losing weapon strength. So if you get hit by poison, or by, say, Skulltaker's ability, the minus 30 weapon strength on his sword, that doesn't apply. And it also negates wounds. So that minus 20 when you're low doesn't exist for Slayers.
That's intense. That's pretty strong. Is it
Felix?
Does it actually work though? Because somebody just sent me a replay where the Slaughter Guard have that thing where their melee attack can't be reduced, and then they sent me a replay of the Slaughter Guard, and their melee attack went down as they got reduced vigor, and when they got near Kugath, the Slime Trail reduced their melee attack as well. So it's like, is that one of those things that it says that, or does it actually work?
I've seen it work. For example, I've had a Dragon Slayer chasing Chameleon Skinks, and neither poison nor wounds was proccing for his weapon strength. It was proccing for the speed, though. That was brutal.
Okay, so it actually works. Gotcha.
Then Felix, the Manling, the only non-dwarf on the dwarf roster.
Ulrika was there for like a hot minute. One patch.
She's not real. We do not speak of the spellcaster.
All right.
He's basically just a mediocre healer. Like, his stat line might look good. Helping Hand is quite good, yeah, for 22 seconds. But it just feels like, in a roster of unbreakable or extremely high leadership, Felix really stands out as the coward on the group.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since he doesn't have innate ITP as well, so a single really good hit on his low HP pool and he starts routing. Then there is the Runesmith. His items are really good, actually. Both his items. +8. Leadership AoE. Very respectable, nothing broken. Hammer of Karakdaraz. Truly one of the items of all time. 50 seconds minus 40 melee attack. Sure, it has a somewhat risky way of recharging it because the Runesmith is not particularly good at fighting and has actually a really low health pool. But holy shit, minus 40 melee attack for an entire minute practically. And like the Rune Lord and Thorek, all the runes, they're pretty good, except the Oath and Steel. And it's not that Oath and Steel is bad. It is just, well, bad, but just for the dwarves, because in multiplayer, dwarves are practically the armored faction. So if your opponent isn't bringing armor piercing, he's already struggling a bit.
Question on the Runesmith.
Yeah.
So if you have a lord who's not a Runesmith, like with other factions, with other spellcasters, like some people disagree, but I think majority of people would say you're trolling if you don't bring a caster. So if you have a melee lord like Grombrindle or Thorgrim or something, should you take the Runesmith in most matchups, or is it like more niche?
It is more niche because, say, Macaisen, if you bring Macaisen, you're already trying to achieve something, say a gunline build. If you have the funds, sure. But if you're bringing like a Runesmith as your primary spellcaster, You'll normally want to bring at least 2 runes, because the cooldown of a rune is 2 minutes, but its sharp cooldown is 1. So you can cycle through runes if you bring 2 of them. And that leaves you at 700 cost, which sure, it isn't incredibly expensive, but it is still the cost of a Longbeard or a Thunderer that you could try and use to synergize more with your current build.
Okay.
So yeah, like, they aren't bad, but I wouldn't prioritize a runesmith, for example. It's just more if you have spare funds to make one.
Okay.
And the engineer, the humble engineer. Restock is really good, although it is rare that you're going to run out of ammo as dwarves. And even rarer that you'll actually be able to make use of it in any other unit that isn't a gyrocopter that can realistically run out of ammo and still have enough models to be worth restocking. And other than that, the engineer is very cheap. He does have decent enough poke with his ranged attack. He has really low health, really relatively low melee stats, though. And even then, that missile strength is a lie. It is actually 240. It just says 300 because of the reload time.
I was talking to Incars about this, but the missile strength is the most inconsistent stat in this entire game. Some units have like reload time factored in, some don't. Some have the fact their multi-entity models factored in, some don't.
Yeah, Makaisa's, for example, it is technically 450 is his missile strength. But it is still just similar to... It is almost the same as the engineer. He hits 2 out of his 3 shots, and he shoots faster. But the engineer shoots fast. 8 seconds is nothing to scoff at. And he has good ammo. So, like, if someone leaves him for a while, sure, the engineer can do some damage. But that's when that really low HP and melee defense come in. Like, if someone wants to kill the engineer, and they're already getting in a box, the engineer is likely to actually rout.
No ITP.
Plus, out of all the heroes, he actually has the second lowest after Felix on leadership. Oh, and the runesmith, I do suppose.
And the Thane! The cowardly Thane!
Oh. The Thane does not feel like it has 7 to leadership.
No, the Thane feels amazing.
I've seen the Thane actually duel the Shredder and win. It does not feel like 7 to leadership.
I wonder if he's winning in melee combat more often so he doesn't take that debuff.
Maybe. That could be it, actually.
Yeah. Interesting. By the way, for the audience, I was hovering over the Kemrian War Sphinx when we were talking about the missile strength being fraudulent, because that thing says it has 145 missile strength, and I've never seen it do any damage at all. Stupid Kemrian War
I think
Sphinx.
they're just adding up all of the archers and counting it as 1 bullet.
It's a lie, and I will not stand for this slander.
But yeah, other than that, the engineer has abilities of dubious quality. Like, entrenchment looks good, but that cannot move combined with such a long duration of 44 seconds. Because that cannot move includes you cannot rotate whatever ranged unit you are using it on. So if the enemy just decides to get out of your sightline, even just like 3 degrees out of your range, that's it, you're stuck facing that direction.
Damn.
Ballistics calibration is similar. 20 reload skill for 22 seconds. That gives you like 2, maybe if you're lucky, 3 more volleys that are quickened instead of like your 1 to 2 volleys. And Artillery Master is similar enough, although the accuracy does help much better than the raw reload skill. Flash Bomb is good. It is just limited on the character it's on.
Okay.
And same for Prospector Spyglass. If it were a bit better on the effect range, I would consider it more often.
Well, dwarves are also already pretty accurate.
Yeah. But it would be niche. It would be like niche gun build for buffed prospectors spyglass. And then for the infantry, the beloved infantry, the main staple of the dwarves. Well, the miners, the humble miners. Probably the best chaff unit in the game because 80 armor and actually high leadership for chaff. I mean, what can you say about him? Vanguard deployment, spell resistance because dwarf, high armor, high leadership. Sure, the stats kind of suck for just melee combat, but it's still just 80 armor.
Yeah.
For 350 or 325 actually. Then both miners and Necrond. Miners of blasting charges, that is. Blasting charges. You've seen them, you love them, probably not. They just decimate low armor infantry. And even if they have high armor, you can still just throw blasting charges to disrupt because they are still explosions. They'll still throw around infantry models around. So if you have to say sacrifice your blasting charging ammo to just delay some wrathmongers to position your lines to shoot them, yeah, that's worth it, even if they don't deal any damage. Same for the Akron's miners, they just have more ammo and frenzy, so they're a bit better in melee. And that's about it for those chaps. And then I will lump up dwarf warriors and longbeards with shielded, like both shielded ones, because they fulfill similar roles. They are relatively poor offensive infantry, but they more than make up for it with those silver shields and high armor, high melee defense.
I didn't realize
Especially
basic
since-
longbeards have encourage.
Yeah, it got nerfed recently when they did the encourage. What was it? They were reworking encourage because longbeards used to have better encourage than any lord in the game. Because the lord's encourage used to be +4 leadership, while the longbeard's encourage was +8.
That's weird.
But it got dragged down to +4 again.
Okay.
But yeah, especially since they are high armor, high and silver shields, they are really good against archers naturally. And this is like miners to an extent also, but especially the heavier dwarf warriors and longbeards. Well, they're not actually heavier, but feel like it. At least the dwarf warriors, they have the same mass as miners. But they feel that units like cavalry or chariots get stuck much more often on dwarf warriors and longbeards.
Huh.
Where like this is where the mass starts seeing its effects. Then there is the great weapon variants of both the dwarf warriors and longbeards. I'll be honest, they lose quite a bit. Their great weapons. Sure, they gain mediocre offensive stats, but taking a hit of 10 melee defense and losing your silver shields kind of makes it much more difficult to actually use them. And sure, they keep the charge defense, the longbeards.
That is pretty rough. Honestly, you and I were just playing before we started this, and in my dwarf game, I had 50 gold left over, and I didn't upgrade my dwarf warriors to great weapons. I just gave out chevrons because I was like, fuck that.
Yeah, it is just tough. Like okay, so don't get me wrong, they are not bad units. Like say for example, if a dwarf warrior, a standard dwarf warrior, is an A tier unit, and like a longbeard is an A tier plus, the longbeard's great weapons are a B minus, and so are the dwarf warrior great weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Like they are not bad by any metric. It's just that they aren't as good, like nearly as good as their shielded counterparts. The one
Yeah.
exception I would actually go with is the Grumbling Guard, the ROR Longbeard Grey weapons. Old Grumblers doesn't seem like much, their ability for Vigor regen,
Hmm.
but over a long game, which is not all that uncommon for a dwarf game to be, you will almost always end up with more Vigor than your opponent. And now that we can see Vigor, that actually does help a lot. But I would just recommend them if you're not taking Thoric or a Rune Lord, which have their Hearth Home abilities. Yeah.
Yeah. Grumbling Guard actually have the same leadership as Norgling's Ironbreakers, because Norgling's Ironbreakers don't have their own Encourage aura.
Yep.
It's kind of wild. Those guys will never break. Perfect Vigor, ITP, own Encourage aura.
It is not actually perfect Vigor. It is every 5 seconds of Vigor, you lose. You have 25 seconds of downtime.
Oh, it's
They
not
just
constant.
lose Vigor very slowly.
Mhm.
Honestly, I think the old Grumblers was a much better way of doing Vigor, or just overall in the game,
Then the
because
Rune
it
of
isn't
Hearth
just
Home.
perfect. Yeah, Rune of Hearth Home, or say Bestow It on Solar Engine, because it isn't just okay. I have perfect Vigor now. I know that is no longer a mechanic I have to worry about. But old Grumblers definitely slows down Vigor loss. Like, it is very noticeable when you actually have a long enough game, especially if they don't have to like chase, say, chariots for 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it's just fight, regroup, fight, you'll definitely see the old Grumblers paying for themselves on their ability. Then the Slayers. The beloved Slayers. As I said before, they have the Slayer that card. So, sure, they can lose speed and melee stats, but they don't actually lose weapon strength, which is very nice. Death Blow is nice as well. It just makes it so that Slayers have that extra juice when they are pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
And naturally, fast, unbreakable. I mean, 30 block chance is better than nothing. And even if you were to drop the anti-large and just send them against archers, 38-32 is still pretty good to chop down defenseless LG archers.
Yeah.
Similar things to Dragon. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say they perform pretty good. Like, even against armored targets, they'll do okay. Obviously, it's not a preferred matchup, but I don't know. I've sometimes had to block like Chaos Warriors in a pinch, and Slayers run up for a little bit and fight, but they do okay.
Yeah, they actually have one less AP than miners, so 16 armor piercing. It's still pretty decent. And then there is the Dragonbacks, basically the same as regular Slayers, except they get the ROR stats, that 30% slowness on melee contacts and weakness to fire, and that juicy 20% physical resistance.
I didn't realize these guys don't do fire damage.
They don't. But Trollhammers certainly do.
Trollhammers do.
But yeah, similar enough to regular Slayers. There is one peculiarity that when a Slayer dies, their death animation actually makes them do one last attack.
Oh yeah. It's called
So
Death
they
Blow in
always-
their unit card, but it's also an ability called Death Blow.
It is not a named abilities. It's just whenever I see Slayer models die, they drop to their knees and swing both axes one last time. Well, as they're dropping down, they swing the axes.
Yeah.
And I've seen the animation get kills, so I'm pretty sure it actually deals damage.
Damn. Slayers are pretty much bloated corpses, confirmed.
True. Then there is the Giant Slayers. Their stats, I feel they are quite deceptive in that they deal a lot of damage, like obscene amounts of damage to large.
Damn, they have a bonus versus large of 30.
Yeah, 30 charge, 30 bonus, almost 50 melee attack.
Okay. So you're not messing
They
around.
deal a lot of damage.
What about the
And
Doom
honestly,
Seekers?
The Doom Seekers, they're a curious unit. They have better stats than the Giant Slayers, but they have lower models, and they feel squishier in a way. Even with Wards of Grimnir, if they somehow manage to get that ward save, yeah, they just feel squishier. But if you combine them with Infantry, they actually just will always outperform Giant Slayers, except against large. For reasons that escape me, Doom Seekers seem to perform very badly against monstrous infantry and single entity monsters. Unlike, say, the Wrathmongers. The Doom Seekers, I don't know if it's because of the animations that they have, that they fling their X's, but it feels like they don't hit nearly as often as their stats would suggest against, say, Croxigors or a Shredder of Lustria.
Weird.
Yeah, same thing for the Brotherhood of Grimyard. They just have better stats because ROR, and they can reuse their Beyblade ability. The Whirlwinds of Death are curious because I actually like them more as an anti-cav tool, since they don't actually just trade all that good into cav or monstrous. Because the spinny thing that they do, it stuns monsters like the Slaneshi Seekers, not the Seekers, the Fiends.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if they're doing their spinny, and the Fiends charge them or try to path out of them, they will actually get stun locked for a moment. And cav like Empire Knights, if they are diving into the Doom Seekers and they are pushing themselves against the Whirlwinds, they will actually take much more damage, much like they would do if they were to charge into a Vortex spell like Flamestorm.
Okay.
The Hammers, then. They are not bad. They are a solid B or B plus. It's just that for regular Hammers, I personally feel Giant Slayers do their job better. Especially since the stat difference in terms of pure melee capabilities is actually very close. Except Giant Slayers are faster and Hammers have armor. But I don't know, it feels that Hammers are very niche. Like, I would bring them if you think you'll need Giant Slayers that are also tanky.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier that you're fighting dwarves, so most people are going to bring armor piercing, so having armor isn't that much of a boon.
Yeah, exactly. And the one issue is that they do route, and they do not have Deathblow.
Oh.
But yeah, it is just a conundrum that Hammers can be strong-ish. Like, they won't lose as many models as quickly as Giant Slayers to ranged, and that's it.
I didn't realize somebody at CA had OCD when they were designing hammers. 10,000 HP, 100 models, 100 armor. Ones and zeros, baby.
Ones and zeros.
Okay.
Peaked Guard are at a weird limbo, where they like any buff makes them very good. Any buff would make them very good in my opinion. But as of right now, I think they're not getting out of the B tier limbo. Because Armor Sundering is nice, The ROR stats are nice. ITP is nice. But you already get ITP from Thorek. You can already get Armor Sundering from Rune of Breaking. All your high DPS archers are either crossbows, which have a respectable base AP, or they're literally just high armor piercing, high damage projectiles. So Armor Sundering, he's on a weird place for an elite melee unit that already has armor piercing. And it's not like it's Plague of Rust that could drop a Chaos Warrior low enough that a Dwarf Warrior is going to start dealing damage, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I feel hammers are in a weird limbo spot, simply because they're not bad. They're just much better units that the dwarfs can field. And lastly, for the infantry, the Ironbreakers. The Ironbreakers, holy shit.
Damn.
High melee defense, high leadership. They don't have ITP. I don't think that is actually true. Never seen an Ironbreaker route in my life. Or terror route, at least. Like, it says, oh yeah, they have 85 leadership. From where? It feels like they could easily have 150.
They have higher leadership than some of your Lord options.
Yeah. Actually, no, they have the same leadership as any of the Lord options except for the Unbreakables.
Nah, Lord and Rune Lord are 10 below them.
Rune Lord are 10 below them, but Thorek isn't. Thorek is tied.
No, Thorek's a Chad.
Yeah. Thorek also feels like he has 150 leadership. And sure, they have weaknesses, quote unquote. They are very slow. They actually don't have that high of a melee attack, but it doesn't matter because their blasting charges, unlike the miners, they gain 16 more missile strength. So it actually starts hurting armored characters, and they have 2 volleys by default. And, 125 armor, 96 HP per model, 66 melee defense. What more could a Dowie ask for? Except the ROR. The ROR gets better missile strength, more melee defense, more models, more leadership, more melee attack.
I didn't realize they had more models.
Nice. Yeah, 100 to 120. They don't actually go up in HP per model. They just get more. But yeah, Vanguard is nice, and it is situationally good. But, yeah.
Vanguard, some Norglings, Ironbreakers behind your opponent on Pillar of Bone.
Yeah, always funny. And also, the expert charge defense. It is always good. Like, being able to withstand any charge from any piggyback knight is always convenient.
Nice. Ironbreakers are Chads.
They are indeed. Then the ranged units.
We haven't been talking about ranged units already? What's with all this missile strength talk if we haven't been talking about missile units?
The grenades are clearly not missiles.
Ah, damn.
There is the 2 crossbow units that are armored, the Quarrelers and Quarrelers Great Weapons. Honestly, same issue as the Dwarf Warrior issue, as the Great Weapons and Shielded. They are more expensive, the Great Weapons, and they just don't synergize as well. They're good because 80 armor, AP, 60 range crossbows are hard to be bad with. It is just shields are more synergistic. Rangers are great. Stalk, Vanguard, they still are shielded with 40 armor and have decent enough melee defense. So they don't get trampled as easily as, say, Night Goblin archers. Then the throwing axes, Rangers' Great Weapons. They are good, objectively speaking. They have DPS very comparable to Trollhammers with very fast reload times. If you want to check, to go over the reload times for units, I believe they are the fastest reload unit in the entire Dwarf roster, bar Makaisen.
Huh.
Oh, and apparently Slayer Pirates.
Apparently,
But
Slayer
they
Pirates.
very low ammo counts.
Didn't we play Empire versus Dwarves, and you took some Rangers Great Weapons and just shredded my Empire Knights, and it was GG in like 30 seconds?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's just that 8-second reload on a missile strength similar to Troll Hammers that is stocked so your enemy cannot see it, and that can Vanguard to any point in the map that is available to Vanguard in. Actually allows dwarves to just really quickly dish damage to key assets, like say a chariot or a knight. And even if they died, they already paid for themselves because they are dirt cheap at 600.
Huh.
And similar enough to Ulthar's Raiders, but they come with the added bonus that Marked by Ulthar is really good and really supports your gun line. And speaking about the Slayer Pirates, I don't know how to feel about. They don't feel like ranged units. I never use them as ranged units. I use them as cheaper Slayers because they actually have the same melee stats except for weapon strength.
Huh.
But since they are cheaper, I can just use them as chasers. Like, go chase those archers. So yeah, I don't feel that the ranged attack comes into play all that often unless you're shooting up at a dragon. Because if not, it feels you're wasting your 6 shots that actually have good damage. Well, technically.
Yeah.
That is counting for 2 out of your 6 volleys, that 44 missile strength.
That is interesting. I didn't think they'd have the exact same stats, but I keep comparing them, and it's like, yeah, they're the same. Same model count, same everything.
Literally same stats, except one has guns and less melee weapon strength, and the other has that.
Fair.
And also, Firewall's moving is fair enough. It can be useful at chasing a chariot away. Long drums, Slayer Room is nice. I personally just take them because they are very cheap for an ROR at a plus 150. Just for extra stats. Like you only get 2 chevrons of silver if you try to compare the costs. Although the same goes for Rangers Great Weapons. Just 2 very cost-effective RORs. So if you have the money to spare, you can always just upgrade a Slayer Pirate to its ROR or the Rangers to its ROR.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is the last Ranger, quote-unquote, the Bugmans.
Bugmans are so good.
High leadership, relatively-ish high HP compared to Rangers. But what makes them really good is regen, charge defense, stock ITP, and actually decently high melee defense. Which they have the same melee defense as Longbeard's Great Weapons.
Damn.
Plus being able to regenerate and being shielded. I remember doing a test long ago where 3 Bugmans will duel 3 range units of any other roster. I believe they lost against the ROR, like 3 RORs of the Dark Shards. And that's it. They were beating White Watchers and Sisters of Avalorn if both of them were shooting at the same time. Just because shields regen mild armor.
Don't have physical resistance, but
Yeah.
Well, the Bugman's Rangers, their healing's only active if their leadership's higher than Wavering, and with immune to psychology and 75 leadership, that's all the time.
Yeah. If they're wavering, it's probably because they are down at 10 models and 300 hit points. And that's when they're calling it quits, most likely.
Yeah.
Then the three Thunder units. The Thunders, Grudgerakers, and Grim Delvers. I have no clue where the missile strength calculations go from the Thunders, because if you hover over them, it can't be over 10 seconds because our reload is 13, but it says missile strength 17. And if you hover over it, it says 22. I'm not sure how that works.
Yep, that's not right. I think it's because it's like over 10 seconds. Well, their reload is longer, so it gets divided. But it's like no, in 10 seconds they'll deal 22 damage.
Yeah, but honestly, I think they're probably the best. How would I say, musket unit? Not that there are many. Like Vampire Coast, Empire, and Dwarfs are the ones I would think off the top of my head. I suppose Kislev technically exists. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I love
shielded,
Thunders.
armor, good missile strength. 2028 for melee stats is nothing to scoff at.
They also have the best voice lines in the game.
They do.
Thunderers!
So do hammers, but hammers, they are stuck in B tier limbo. But the ones I really like are Grudgerakers, even if they are a bit less effective than Thunderers. Like if Thunderers are middle of A, I would put Grudgerakers at bottom of A.
Hmm.
Because Grudgerakers reload very quickly at 8 seconds. And they deal so much damage.
Damn. Fast reloading shotgun infantry.
Other than that, same stats as the Thunderers, melee-wise. The only thing that changes is the gun. So shielded, armored, the good stuff. The Thunderers, I feel they're better at poking from quote-unquote far away, while Grudgerakers, if you want something deleted, aim 3 Grudgerakers at it, and it will not be there anymore. Grim Delvers are technically not a Grudgerakers. They are actually counted for the Thunder's unit caps by CA for unknown reasons.
Huh.
And they are actually very good. They don't reload as quickly as the base Grudgerakers. They do have Frenzy, so they're a bit better in melee. But the most important is Vanguard Stalk. You can place these guys anywhere on the map, wait for Cav to show up. They can't see them because the stalk range is about 100 meters. So by the time they see it, unless they are really on top of that singular Cav unit, the Grudgerakers are going to get a shot off or a volley off, and there goes that Cav unit.
Damn.
Then the always fun Iron Drakes. Flame Iron Drakes, small range, but they are very balanced, in my opinion. Balanced in terms of the damage they deal. They do feel unbreakable. Every single time they rout, they come back. You normally just have to shatter them.
Yep.
Trollhammers, on the other hand, they deal damage, high range. 170 beats most crossbows, I think. If not all crossbows / archers that aren't elves.
Did you enjoy old Iron Drake Trollhammer torpedoes or the rework where now they have longer range?
Hard to say because the Trollhammer rework coincided with the Brimstone rework. So it was basically you're losing your 4 Gyrocopters that shoot cannonballs, but you are gaining long-range Trollhammer torpedoes.
Mm-hmm.
So in that context, I would be hard-pressed to say I miss the old Trollhammers, but on their own, the old Trollhammers operated more like throwing axes do.
Mm.
Like the Rangers' great weapons. where the DPS felt higher, but obviously they had the limitation of range. But I would say it's just a straight up buff that they got ranged.
What about the
And
Skilda
the-
God?
They are actually quite good. They are hard to field because they are an expensive ranged unit that doesn't have stock. But they make up for it with the triple resistances. 40 fire, 20 physical, 35 spell. For example, against Chaos Dwarves, which have flaming mundane projectiles, they'll actually trade into any of the Chaos Dwarves ranged infantry and win handedly.
Damn.
They also are counted as artillery, so if you shoot goblins, they'll be attacked by artillery minus leadership and flee.
That's interesting that they throw artillery on that one.
Speaking of which, the steam guns on the gyrocopters are also artillery.
Why?
Unknown reasons.
Okay.
But yeah. Steam gyros. Bane of multiplayer because flying chariots with bombs, with AP, with high armor, with high speed. It doesn't feel that they have 64 leadership. It feels like they have 80. And yeah, they are actually decently good on the charge. 25 charge bonus is pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
So is the armor. Very mobile, very damage dealer. Brimstone guns are actually good. They just have very low range. But against clumped up infantry, like what happens when a single entity gets surrounded by, say, Gores or Orc Boys, if they get blobbed up, Brimstone gun can clear most infantry, most light infantry or medium infantry in a volley or two. Especially with the bird leadership. Gyro bombers are on paper not bad. But as I was telling you before the recording, they just feel so janky. They still have the AI of when they were a single entity, and as such, there is a solid 60% chance that during a game, they will get stuck on each other. On like a model of gyro bombers will get stuck on its own unit and be unable to move. And I don't know, that just feels way too janky for a unit that is supposed to be relatively mobile.
What about when they had the bug where they could unload all of their ammo in one volley and insta-kill stuff?
They were amazing. The breath attack machine gun was truly a pinnacle of innovation.
Kugath Plaguefather, more like Swiss cheese Plaguefather. He's dead. There he goes.
But yeah, there is also the main issue that people with good reason complain that gyrocopters are fast and can flee. But then, if they saw how gyro bombers perform when they can't flee against basic harpies, I think there is an argument to be made there, actually.
Mm-hmm.
That minus 15 speed plus the jankiness of the gyro bombers makes it so it is impossible to flee an air fight, and you are forced to land on your own friendlies. Even if you fly over your friendlies, like say you fly over a gunline of Thunders, you still take so much damage as a gyro bomber that it is not worth just flying over and letting your friendly shoot. You have to land.
Mm-hmm.
The Skyhammer, same issues, although they are more bearable because they can at least fire while moving and don't have 64 leadership. So they can at least try and tough it out, and the bombs are a bit better. The main issue is that gyrocopters have so many models that it leaves the gyro bombers on the dust. They have to use 9 out of their 11 bombs to match the bombs dropped by Gyrocopters. And unfortunately, they actually have the same bombs. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, same bombs.
Weird.
And that is to match one bomb drop of Gyrocopters. Like, gyro bombers, for unknown reasons, have less bombs.
Yeah, because the Gyrocopters have 12 models.
Yeah. So they drop 12 bombs.
That's weird.
And the gyro bombers don't. They have 4. So they have to drop 3 bombs to match them. So, like, 2 gyros outcompeting gyro bomber in terms of dropping bombs. Plus, they can be in different places. I don't know. I just wish CA would consider reworking the gyro bombers. They aren't bad because bombs are good, but they are just outcompeted by gyros in speed, melee capabilities, ranged capabilities, and bombs.
So everything.
Yes. And then the dreadful, the terror of the skies, the barge. Honestly, I don't have to say much about the barge. If you can't shoot it down, and the dwarf player actually decides to defend it with, say, 4 thunderers against dragons or manticores or whatever, there is nothing you can do. The barge does not have 40 ammo. Ignore that. It feels like it has 300 ammo. It never runs out of it, and it will kill your entire army. And for artillery bolt throwers.
For me, the most messed up thing is the Spear of Grugny. I don't know why it needed that, where it's like, just in case there's a single entity you're scared of, Spear of Grugny.
You know, I never asked myself that, but yeah, good point.
It doesn't need it.
But yeah, at 11,000 hit points, 90 armor, the leadership of a giant at 100. It just feels so good. And it basically negates any possible ground approach. Because sure, if every lord was Macaison, and every infantry was Macaison, because Macaison is very squishy, you could army lost the Thunderbarge, but all the dwarf would need to do is Thoric, Rune of Negation, Anvil, and you're not killing Thoric in time unless you're like rushing him down with a Dread Saurian.
Mm-hmm.
And for the artillery, bolt throwers, incredibly strong, 8 models. The AI still has not figured out how to attack an 8-model artillery unit. Grudge throwers, a tier below bolt throwers, even though they're the same cost and have more range, simply because they don't do the DPS. Cannons, they're good. Solid artillery, good range. The Goblobbers, they're fun. Minus 16 leadership, on top of being damaged by artillery, is very strong, depending on the situation, especially against low leadership factions. Hewers are just anti-large blasting charges. I don't use them as quote-unquote artillery. They are just blasting charges for big thing. And organ guns and flame cannons compete for the same niche. And they are both outcompeted by the bolt thrower at longer ranges.
Is that niche being terrible?
The niche is just anti-infantry DPS that can also target single entities, which is the same thing that the bolt thrower can do because they have more models to shoot with. But no, the flame cannon, I would put the flame cannon above the organ gun because they both have practically the same range. But the organ gun has that issue, which it will shoot a unit of infantry at the very corner and waste 80% of the projectile shot because the first 4 shots on that volley already killed everything on that area,
Uh-huh.
and then the other 12 don't do anything. The flame cannon being less accurate actually helps it, because the weird flame streams it does, it kind of just allows it to shoot a bit more infantry per volley.
I miss when it
And
fired fireballs.
yeah, truly the golden days where the fireball launching flame cannons had 300 range.
Yes.
And I believe that is the entire Dowie roster.
It is.
Yay. Please bring back Valhurson, please. Okay, thanks.
So, make a spot next to you so I can hop up there. Bam. All right, let's run through 2 theoretical matchups. So if I'm throwing Kislev at your dwarves, what should the people out there do to stop Kislev?
So Kislev has 2 main issues. They are a fellow armored faction in the sense that they can field armored cav and armored infantry, and that they are unbreakable, like you. But in a different sense, that they're unbreakable is actually unbreakable for a few 30 seconds, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do is not leave them like an opportunity to have their cavalry. Just run all of your range down, and then you would have to fight armor versus armor, but they have cavalry and you don't. So like rangers, I would avoid rangers personally. The cav you're most concerned about, give or take, is the dervishes, because they will eat up your artillery that aren't bolt throwers. Again, bolt throwers, 8 models, much more difficult to shut down. So I would run bolt throwers over, say, cannons, for example. Shielded dwarf warriors, always solid. Lord Thorek, it is always a good option. I don't think there is any matchups where Thorek is explicitly bad. But I personally prefer just going cheap. The Lord is the cheapest option.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows you to just field Trollhammers, field Iron Drakes, because they actually have high HP per model and high armor. So you can just tank it out. And shotguns. Since Gyrocopters actually deal a lot of damage very quickly and are armored, they can actually just take a charge, guard mode against the Kislevite Cav, and tough it out. And then you have like spare funds for a Thane.
That's a 0 gold spend.
It is indeed a 0 gold spend. But yeah, something similar. Like you're worried about mostly Cav overrunning you and leaving your infantry without any way of clearing enemy infantry.
Mm-hmm.
Because unfortunately, Kislev is a hybrid faction, so if you were to run, say, great weapons, they can just shoot you, and you cannot actually catch them unless you get a charge animation off.
What about Nurgle?
Against the Nurgle, I do like throwing axes. Nurgle has very limited range. They don't have any ranged infantry unless I missed something. So they have to rely on their Marauder Horsemen. Their Rotfly ROR, I believe, has the range attack, the Angels of Decay.
Yeah.
And their Soulgrinders / Kugath. Makaisen is just there to support the throwing axes, for example, plus ranged. Shielded Dwarf Warriors, Longbeards, always solid. You do want 1 or 2 crossbows to deal with any possible Marauder Horseman shenanigans. And I like the Grim Delvers. Since they are stocked, they are much harder to shut down immediately. And they can DPS a Fury very quickly if it has landed on any of the other Rangers. Garagrim, as mentioned earlier, magical attacks, so all the demons struggle much harder against your gunline, or well, axe line, I suppose. Miners, chaff, Dragon Slayer, if you need to duel, say, an out of ammo soul grinder. And bolt throwers, difficult to shut down, but put pressure on set soul grinders.
Stop yourself from getting kited.
Yeah, in a nutshell, you're most worried about Furies. Not worried, but you have to be mindful of Furies that shut down your ranged. Pestigores, which if you focus fire with Rangers should not be all that much of an issue. And the Soul Grinders that are kiting you. If those three fall, Kugath actually does not like getting kited by Makaisen, which is much faster. Especially if it has to deal with Garagrim giving Makaisen magical bullets by just being nearby.
Huh, I honestly thought Malachi already had magic bullets, but he does not.
No, he has an ability to give himself magical attacks.
Alright. Well, sir, I think that about covers it. Any residual thoughts we missed?
CA, please buff Thorgrim, please. If you nerf Thorek and give it all to Thorgrim, my life is yours.
Thorgrim Grudgebearer. I'm still shocked he doesn't have armor piercing. I learned that today, and I didn't like learning that.
One day he will also have the Axe of Grimnir and not the fake Empire one.
The Axe of Limpnir.
Yeah, because supposedly Gotrek, Grombrindal, and Thorgrim all have axes of Grimnir, and yet only one of these does not have AP.
I know in the current patch dwarves don't need buffs, but I do find it funny we were talking about dwarves don't have a lot of access to magic damage, which is silly because in the lore they actually have the most access to magic damage. Runic weapons aren't as rare as Total War makes them out to be. Like, they're all over the damn place. There's different degrees of runic weapons, but there are a shitload of them.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of surprised there isn't like a toggle like for the Grail Knights, where the Grail characters you can turn on or turn off Blessing of the Lady, or for those Chaos Dwarf Iron Demons you can turn off or turn on the Forge Bound or whatever. I'm surprised you don't have that with like you can turn on or turn off rune weapons for Dwarf Warriors and Longbeards and add
would instantly give any elf player an aneurysm if they were to see such a buff for the dwarves.
I know. I'm just saying it's lore friendly. I'm not saying it's balanced.
I think that dwarves are strong enough as is that any buffs, because I consider dwarves to be the best faction currently.
Yeah.
Demons are strong. Seekers are very strong. But I feel that if played well, dwarves have exactly one matchup where they would struggle the most at, and that is slightly struggle against Skaven.
Skaven OP.
And that is, like, dwarves, it is still plenty winnable, and I don't see any other matchups that are just impossible. Like, oh, dwarves can't win against ogres or Norska or whatever. I think it's the opposite, actually. Like, if someone takes the time to just concoct a build to fight, say, Khorne, High Elves, Lizardmen, or something, as dwarves, you can 9 times out of 10 just make a build strong enough that counters 95% of the builds that they could possibly bring in their faction and still win. So yeah, dwarves honestly just incredibly strong, mostly because they don't have explicitly bad units, just janky on the gyro bombers and just relatively power crept with master engineers, for example. But that would imply that, oh, your roster needs help. No, the roster strong. Having 3 bad units on a roster of 50-ish probably units total would not be bad, and those units aren't even bad, they're just janky.
Yeah. What about
like, as much as
what about pig riders for dwarves?
while it would be very funny and it would make them incredibly powerful because they would probably be armored, uh, dwarves do not believe in the use of animals. They are unreliable, unlike dwarves.
Okay.
You know, like even Ungrim, like people shit on Ungrim because slow duelist that can't catch much on most days. But he is a slayer, so his weapon strength can never go down. He is unbreakable. He has very substantial spell resist, honestly. Good health pool, high armor, high melee attack charge, and melee defense. And like on another roster, Ungrim would probably be good.
Yeah, he has 3 weapon strength buffs. Red Ruin, Axe of Dargo, and Heroic Killing Blow.
Yeah, like Ungrim on another roster that could supply a spellcaster, for example. Or just like he could probably operate much similar to Tyrion, where he's just a late game threat that you have to clear after you've already cleared the other threats. But unlike Tyrion, which is a cover and army losses, Ungrim is not.
What if there was a spell that instead of a net, it forced units to ground? That'd be OP. Just force Karl Franz to land in front of Ungrim.
It would be incredibly good. Like, even like Grumbrindal, for example, he is expensive, 1.5k. Same issues as Ungrim, and it's just that his items are rather redundant, I would say. Runehelm, for example, 100 gold for plus 12 permanent leadership around himself. On any other faction, that would be great, but then you remember you're playing dwarves, leadership isn't real, your units don't route.
Yeah, you're never breaking anyway. And he himself is unbreakable, so it's not even like he can use it.
Yeah.
And he's not wearing a helmet, so what's the fuck with the rune helm of Zufbar? Where is it?
Stolen by Skaven, allegedly.
Damn it.
Same to an extent with the Rune of Grok One Eye. Plus 8 leadership is nice. It is never bad. It is just you are playing dwarves.
Yeah. I feel like if Skaven had leadership nerfs to their own faction. Like, yeah, bro, you're routing. What do you want from me?
So, like, similar issue with Belagar Mighty Oathstone, plus melee defense. That would be very nice if you weren't playing dwarves that already have high melee defense.
I think a lot of effect ranges in Game 3 need to be increased to, like, 55 or even 75 range.
Yeah. And it's just that none of these lords I would consider bad. It is just that they have to compete with make your DPS melee units in Slayers unkillable for 40 seconds, very cheap, or they're literally competing with Thorek, which I would consider probably the best lord in the game. I cannot picture a roster in which Thorek would be. I don't think I would ever pick Thorek. Like, oh yeah, Beastman, Rune of Negation on Butchers of Kalkengard. High Elves, Rune of Breaking on Dragon Princes. I cannot fathom a roster that would not take Thorek in at least some matchups. And having to compete with that as a regular lord, like a Rune Lord or Ungrim or Belagar, it is tough.
What about Norska? Norska doesn't need no Thorek. They got Wolfric, the boat caster.
Mammoths with Rune of Speed, let's go.
Oh, you're right. Never mind. Mammoth's OP if they only had Rune of Speed.
If only they had that plus 45 speed.
Is it really 45? Wow.
Yeah, it is tailored to dwarves that don't move fast. So Rune of Speed on any other roster would actually be very good.
That'd be insane. I feel like Brood Horrors... This is a complete side note, and this video is going on too long, but, like, Brood Horrors, I feel like they're animation capped, because I've tried giving them more speed before with, like, 2v2 setups, you know, where you, like, give them a light caster with Barona's Time Warp. Even though their speed goes up, they don't actually move that much faster, and I think it's just because the Brood Horror can only literally move so fast with its like run.
I see. Yeah,
I haven't confirmed that,
even-
but it's one of those feel things.
yeah. But no, like for Dwarf specifically, one last thing on the runes. All runes are good. I don't think there is a single bad rune. Even though I shit on Oath and Steel, it's only bad because you're playing multiplayer against people that know that armor needs armor piercing. If it wasn't because of that, Rune of Steel would be decent.
Mhm.
And Hearth and Home, easily top 5 items in the entire game.
All right. There is your dwarf guide, people. Again, I don't know what order these are coming out. I've already recorded like 8. So it just depends. But we'll eventually get all 24 out there. Thanks to Gotrek for his time. Is there anything you'd like to promote? I don't think you do YouTube content, but...
Rock and Stone.
Rock and Stone. Somebody joined and left. Weird. Goodbye, sir.
All right, see ya.
Roar.
Subscribe, yes, yes.